Most people don't lose in life because they lack talent, opportunity, or intelligence. They lose because they spend every single day fighting the wrong battle, the battle inside their own mind. They wake up and immediately start wrestling with thoughts that tell them they're not enough, not ready, not capable, not worthy. They argue with their doubts, chase their fears, and exhaust their energy trying to silence voices that were never meant to be silenced. And the truth is, the harder you fight your negative thoughts, the louder they become. Because resistance gives them power. Attention gives them life. Here's what nobody teaches you. Your mind produces thoughts the way your heart produces beats. You don't control every thought, but you do control which ones you believe. And belief is what shapes destiny. You don't need to destroy every negative thought to rise. You need to stop obeying them. You don't need a perfect mind to build a powerful life. You need a disciplined one. Every great change in your life begins the moment you realize that you are not the voice in your head. You are the one listening. And once you understand that, everything shifts. That voice that says you can't, that's not prophecy. That's fear trying to protect you from growth. That voice that says you're not ready, that's comfort begging you to stay small. And the moment you stop fighting those voices and start walking forward anyway, you take your power back. Because champions are not people without negative thoughts. Champions are people who refuse to let those thoughts decide their direction. They acknowledge them, learn from them, and move beyond them. They don't beg their mind for permission to succeed. They don't wait for confidence to appear. They build confidence by acting in spite of doubt. And every step they take trains the mind to follow the body. Today is not about silencing your thoughts. Today is about rising above them. Today is about realizing that your future doesn't depend on the noise in your head. It depends on the courage in your heart. And the moment you stop fighting your negative thoughts and start leading them, your entire life begins to change. Your mind is not your enemy. Your interpretation is, and this single truth has the power to completely transform the way you experience your life. Most people believe they are at war with their own mind, that their thoughts are sabotaging them, holding them back, and working against their happiness and success. But the mind is not designed to harm you. The mind is designed to protect you, to detect threats, and to keep you alive. The problem is not that the mind produces negative or fearful thoughts. The problem is how you interpret those thoughts and what meaning you attach to them. When your mind says, "This is risky, you might fail," or "you are not enough," it is not trying to destroy you. It is trying to prevent discomfort, rejection, or uncertainty. However, when you interpret these protective signals as absolute truths instead of temporary messages, you allow fear to take control of your decisions. Every situation in life is filtered through interpretation. Two people can face the same challenge and experience completely different realities, not because the situation is different, but because their interpretation is different. One sees failure as proof of inadequacy, while another sees it as evidence of growth. One interprets anxiety as a sign to retreat, while another interprets it as a sign of expansion. Your interpretation determines whether a thought becomes a limitation or a lesson. When you believe every negative thought is a fact, you surrender your power. When you recognize it as just one possible perspective, you regain control. Most suffering is not created by events themselves, but by the stories we tell about them. You're not hurt by what happens as much as you are hurt by what you tell yourself about what happens. A missed opportunity becomes, "I always mess up." A rejection becomes, "I am unworthy." A setback becomes, "I will never succeed." These interpretations quietly build your identity. And once they become identity, they begin to control your behavior. You start avoiding risks, settling for less, and shrinking your potential, all because of meanings you assign to passing experiences. The moment you learn to question your interpretation, you break the cycle. You begin to ask, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Is this the only way to see this situation? What would a stronger version of me believe about this? This is not about positive thinking or pretending everything is perfect. This is about accurate thinking. It is about refusing to let fear-driven interpretations dictate your future. When you change the meaning you give to your experiences, you change the emotional weight they carry. And when you change the emotional weight, you change your actions. Your mind will continue to offer you thoughts, some empowering, some limiting, some wise, some rooted in fear, but you're the one who decides which thoughts become your reality through the interpretations you choose, and that choice, repeated daily, is what slowly builds the life you live. Negative thoughts are signals, not commands, and understanding this distinction is one of the most powerful mental shifts a person can make. Most people treat every negative thought as an instruction that must be followed or a truth that must be obeyed. When the mind says this is too hard, they stop. When it says you will fail, they hesitate. When it says you're not good enough, they retreat. Over time, this habit trains the brain to control the direction of life, even though the brain's primary job is simply to generate ideas, possibilities, memories, warnings, and predictions. Thoughts appear automatically based on past experiences, emotional states, and perceived risks. They are information, not orders. They are messages passing through awareness, not rules that define your future. Your mind constantly scans for danger and discomfort. When it senses uncertainty, change, or potential failure, it sends out negative thoughts as caution signs. These thoughts often arrive quickly and emotionally charged because the brain evolved to prioritize survival, not success. The problem begins when you confuse the presence of a thought with its authority. A signal can be noticed without being obeyed. Just like a warning light on a dashboard, a thought tells you something needs attention, not that you must abandon the journey. When you learn to observe negative thoughts without automatically reacting to them, you create space between impulse and action. That space is where growth happens. Instead of panicking when a fearful thought appears, you begin to ask what it is trying to communicate. Is it highlighting a skill you need to develop? Is it revealing a fear that requires courage? Is it reminding you that this path matters because it challenges you? In this way, negative thoughts become tools for awareness rather than barriers to progress. Many people spend years fighting their own mind, trying to suppress unwanted thoughts or judge themselves for having them. This struggle only strengthens the thought's influence. What weakens it is understanding its role. When a negative thought says you might fail, it is not predicting your future. It is revealing that you care about the outcome. When it says this is uncomfortable, it is not asking you to quit. It is showing you where growth is happening. As you practice treating thoughts as signals, you stop letting emotions make decisions for you. You learn to move forward even when fear speaks. You learn to take action even when doubt is present. You stop waiting for confidence and instead build confidence through consistent movement. Over time, the mind begins to trust your leadership. It still sends signals, but it no longer controls the steering wheel. You become the one choosing direction, pace, and destination, guided by purpose instead of fear, and that is the moment your inner world shifts from resistance to cooperation, unlocking a level of self-mastery that most people never reach. You don't defeat darkness by fighting it. You outgrow it, and this idea changes the way you approach every struggle, fear, and limitation in your life. Most people believe that personal growth is about constant battle, about forcing negativity away, suppressing weakness, and wrestling their flaws into submission. But real transformation does not come from conflict with yourself. It comes from expansion. Darkness is not something that disappears because you attack it. Darkness disappears when light becomes stronger. In the same way, your fears, doubts, and insecurities lose their grip not because you fight them harder, but because you become bigger than them. Think about how a child outgrows their clothes. They don't argue with them, tear them, or feel ashamed of them. They simply grow, and one day those clothes no longer fit. Your struggles are the same. The version of you that is afraid, uncertain, and hesitant exists because your current capacity is limited by experience, belief, and awareness. As you learn, evolve, and challenge yourself, that version of you becomes too small to contain who you are becoming. The darkness does not need to be destroyed. It becomes irrelevant. When people try to fight their negative patterns, they often reinforce them. Fighting requires attention, and attention gives energy. If you wake up every day focused on what you don't want, you keep it alive in your awareness. Growth works in the opposite direction. You shift your focus toward who you are becoming. You invest in new habits, new disciplines, new standards, and new perspectives. Without even noticing it at first, the old struggles begin to fade. This is why sustainable change feels calm instead of violent. It is not fueled by anger or desperation, but by commitment. You stop trying to prove you're strong enough to overcome your past, and you start building a future that no longer fits the person you used to be. Every book you read, every skill you develop, every difficult choice you make in the direction of your purpose increases your capacity. And as your capacity grows, the things that once overwhelmed you become manageable, then small, then insignificant. Outgrowing darkness also means forgiving yourself for ever having been in it. Many people stay stuck because they're angry at their past, ashamed of their mistakes, and embarrassed by their old mindset. But those moments were necessary steps in your development. You do not become powerful by rejecting your past. You become powerful by learning from it. The most dangerous trap is believing you must first eliminate your fears before you can move forward. The truth is, you move forward and your fears shrink in response. Motion builds strength. Strength builds confidence. Confidence builds clarity. And clarity builds a life that no longer has space for the darkness that once ruled your mind. Because you have grown into someone whose vision is larger than their fear and whose future is brighter than their past. Every breakthrough begins with changing the conversation in your head, because the words you repeat to yourself every day quietly shape your identity, your confidence, and the direction of your life. Long before your actions change, your internal dialogue changes. The way you speak to yourself becomes the blueprint for how you behave, what you attempt, what you avoid, and what you believe is possible for you. If your inner voice is constantly critical, fearful, and limiting, your life will reflect hesitation and self-doubt. If your inner voice is intentional, encouraging, and disciplined, your life begins to move in the direction of growth and purpose. Most people are not limited by their circumstances as much as they are limited by the language they use inside their mind. When a challenge appears, the mind often says, "This is impossible," "This is too much," or "I'm not ready." These phrases feel harmless, but repeated over time, they become commands that the nervous system follows. Your body reacts to your words as if they are reality. When your inner conversation is filled with uncertainty, your posture weakens, your energy drops, and your motivation disappears. But when you change that conversation to "This is difficult, but I am capable, I will learn as I go, and I don't need to be perfect to begin," your nervous system responds with strength and focus. A breakthrough does not come from pretending that life is easy. It comes from choosing better language in the face of difficulty. It comes from refusing to label yourself as powerless. It comes from replacing the question, "What if I fail?" with "What if I grow?" That shift may seem small, but it changes how your brain searches for solutions. Your mind always works to confirm what you tell it. If you tell it you are stuck, it finds reasons you are stuck. If you tell it you are learning, it finds ways forward. Over time, your internal conversation becomes your personal philosophy. It becomes the story you live inside. When you intentionally rewrite that story, you rewrite your future. You stop identifying as someone who is afraid, and you start identifying as someone who is becoming. You stop describing yourself as broken, and you start seeing yourself as unfinished. You stop speaking in the language of limitations and begin thinking in the language of possibility. This does not mean you never experience doubt or frustration. It means you no longer allow those emotions to define your direction. You acknowledge them, but you choose your words with purpose. You decide that even in moments of uncertainty, you will speak strength into your situation. And with each new conversation in your mind, your actions begin to align with your higher standard, your confidence expands, your habits shift, and eventually the life you once only imagined begins to take shape around the person you have chosen to become. Mastering your thoughts is the foundation of mastering your life, because every action you take, every decision you make, and every result you experience first appears as a thought. Long before you change your habits, your relationships, or your future, you change the way you think. Your mind is the command center of your life. If your thoughts are undisciplined, your life becomes chaotic. If your thoughts are focused, your life becomes powerful. This is not about forcing yourself to think positive all the time, but about training your mind to work for you instead of against you. Most people allow their thoughts to run on autopilot. They wake up, repeat the same worries, the same doubts, the same fears, and the same stories about what they cannot do, and then wonder why nothing changes. What you repeatedly think becomes what you repeatedly feel, and what you repeatedly feel becomes what you repeatedly do. This is how ordinary thinking builds ordinary lives. But when you decide to take control of your thoughts, everything begins to shift. You become intentional. You stop letting emotions dictate your direction and start letting purpose guide your movement. A disciplined mind does not mean a perfect mind. It means you notice when your thoughts are pulling you toward fear, excuses, or comfort, and you choose a stronger direction anyway. It means you catch yourself when you start creating stories about failure and replace them with commitment to growth. It means you stop saying, "I can't," and start asking, "How can I?" Every time you redirect your thinking, you strengthen your mental muscle. And just like any muscle, the more you train it, the stronger it becomes. When your thoughts become disciplined, your behavior follows. You begin to wake up with more clarity. You waste less time arguing with yourself. You stop needing motivation because your mind is already aligned with your goals. Challenges stop feeling overwhelming and start feeling like problems to solve. Even setbacks become useful because your thinking turns them into lessons instead of labels. Mastering your thoughts also changes the way you see yourself. You stop identifying as someone who is stuck and start identifying as someone who is growing. You stop believing your limitations are permanent and start seeing them as temporary stages in your development. This shift creates confidence that is not dependent on approval, circumstances, or comfort. It creates stability inside you, which is the strongest form of power a person can have. When your mind is mastered, your life becomes intentional. Your relationships improve because you respond instead of react. Your work improves because you focus instead of doubt. Your future expands because your thinking no longer traps you in the past. You do not need control over everything around you when you have control over what happens within you. And that inner control becomes the engine that moves your entire life forward with purpose, consistency, and strength. So if this message helped you take one step closer to mastering your own mind and your own life, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.